So here is the Schrade 56LM. Go over the specs real quick here. It is a 4.4 inch full tanged 1095 high carbon drop point blade. Full length is 99.2 inches and it weighs a whopping 9.3 ounces, so well under a pound, which was one of the deciding factors in choosing this knife for the purpose that it's serving for me. It comes with a plastic Kydex type sheath, with a ferrous rod, and it works well. I'll show you the video footage of me using it here in a minute. Overall, it's a great knife. I like it a lot. And it was a little bit dull when I first got it out and first used it, as you saw in the footage. But I've sharpened it up so that it is hair shaving sharp, in fact, as I've got hair grow on my arm now. And I'm very happy with it. I really like the Micarta handle. It's got a texture to the handle already, to the Micarta. Schrade did that. Put some texture into it. Plus, when Micarta gets wet, it ends up getting grippier. So that's a really nice feature of having Micarta. I do have one complaint on it. The sheath was a fully closed belt loop holder, so you had to take your belt off in order to feed it through there. So with the bandsaw and a little bit of sandpaper, I made, and the heat gun, or you could use a hair dryer, I suppose. I ended up making a little cut, a diagonal cut, and then with a pencil as a spacer guide, and the heat gun molded it from where I cut it, molded it down so that it folds more flat, like so. So you see how that spacing is, and it's cut there, so that once it goes onto the belt, it actually goes like that, sits like that. Maybe this would be a better angle without the ferrous rod there. So it's in there, and it puts that tension right there. If it jumps up and down from maybe running or what have you. So it's not gonna. I've tested it. I've done some good jogging with it, and it works and it stays and it does its job. And that way, I can just snap it and get it onto the belt just fine without having to take off my belt. So I did that, and after doing that, I've been very happy with the knife. And that 4.4 inches. That's a good size for me. I liked that the weight was well under a pound. The 4.4 to 5 inches, 4.5 to 5 inches was kind of what I was looking for. Overall, I would always suggest to stay between 4 and 6 inches, so that way you're not going too much over a pound. With the main purpose, the main idea of this being a survival bushcrafting knife that you're going to use in that. Something bad happened, and so that you have that go bag or 48-hour bag, get home bag, bug out bag, whatever you want to call your bag that you've got this survival bushcraft style knife stored in. That's that's what I would suggest, is that you stay between those weights. Another couple things I wanted to mention about the knife, or about the purchasing of one of these knives in general. Deciding factors for me. Always go with the full Tang. The last thing you want to have happen when you're in that oh crap scenario and you're using it for survival, and you're doing a task with it, and the handle comes off of the blade. The blade and the handle separate because of whatever you were doing was putting it through some heavy abuse, and that just, it happens. You know, they're all man-made, so not everything's perfect all the time. So with that, the last thing you want is to have that, to where your blade and your handle are separate, and you don't have anything to get them back together and stay together reliably. So always go with the full Tang. The full Tang allows you to use the back end of it kind of as a hammer, and also overall the whole knife, the whole blade, everything's going to be stronger when you have a full Tang. The Micarta is definitely, I would say, the best way to go, especially if you live and tend to be around and travel in wetter environments here in the southeastern United States. A lot of rainfall, a lot of wet areas, so I like the Micarta. If you end up not going with Micarta, I would suggest the G10 or a rubber type material for your handle. Something, again, that's on the grippier side. So that you make sure that you have a strong hold of it and a good grip, and use it safely. Another thing is things that I don't like seeing people do with these knives, which you see a lot of reviewers tend to do this. They try to put them through heck to show you how durable they are. That's great and fine and dandy, but if this is your knife that you're going to keep and throw in that bag for a survival situation or scenario, or this is your main go-to knife for outdoors, bushcrafting, hunting, whatever, don't beat the crap out of it. Don't put it through hell and then throw that in the bag to go with you. Mainly for the sake of using it as a pry bar or throwing it. You know, that's cool and everything, but if it breaks, you know, these knives, the way these blades are cut and designed and everything, their strength is not as using it as a pry bar. Their strength is using it as a cutting tool, as a slicing tool, or a chopping tool. Not so much for using it as a pry bar. That's what you get a pry bar for. So, yeah, don't do that with a knife like that. You know, that's great that they're made tough and for demonstration purposes, that's cool, but if this is your knife that you're going to use, don't do that with it. Avoid you doing that and look for something else to use as a pry bar at all costs. And same thing with the throwing. Most likely you're going to end up breaking it, damaging it, weakening it, or possibly losing it because you didn't hit your target and it went flying off somewhere. So don't do that. The other thing is serrations. Okay, if your primary use for this knife is maybe on a boat or doing a lot of rock climbing, where 90% of the time that you're going to pull it out and use it is for cutting rope, then yes, maybe a half serrated, 3/4 serrated, full serrated. Maybe that's the ticket for you for that situation. For that being your primary use of cutting rope, serration definitely helps make it a little faster when you're cutting rope, especially if you're having to cut a lot of rope. But at the same time, if you're getting this as a survival knife, darn bug. If you're using this as a survival knife, bushcrafting, whatever, not always cutting rope, more so probably going to end up using it to collect firewood and harvest wood for a fire, then you don't want a serrated blade. You want a full, flat, fine-edged finish. No serrations. Serrations are bad for this kind of purpose for a knife for this purpose, for those tasks. The serration ends up limiting its abilities to perform those other tasks like splitting wood and chopping wood. And maybe even for like if you have to do some hardcore medical practicing out in the field that you need a nice fine edge for, the serration is just not the way to go. So I think those are all the important points I wanted to make, the way I feel about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure I'm going to have people who disagree. That's great. Whatever works best for you. The other thing with size I wanted to say is, don't get something huge if you're not used to carrying and having a huge knife and using a very large knife. If you've never handled a knife that's over 6 inches in blade length, then why would you go and get a 6.5, 7, 8 inch blade as your go-to knife? That's just not a good idea. Go with something that you're more comfortable with and that you've got just maybe a little bit of skill with. And if you don't have any or have very little skill, go out and use it and get comfortable with it. Practice using it. Make sure that you know what you can do with it. Having a tool and not knowing how to use it, you might as well just not have the tool. So, yep, that's all I want to say. Hope you liked the video. Give me your thoughts. Subscribe. Tell me what knife you ended up going with. And here at the end, I'm going to roll some images of some other knives that were contenders in the practice of me dialing down which one I wanted to get for what I'm using it for. So, check out those knives. They're also great knives on the budget side of things, roughly $100 or less. I went with this one. I couldn't be happier. Great knife, great tool. And thanks for watching. Bye.